So let's talk about microstates. Today, there's 5 microstates in the world, and they're all located in Europe, whom, as you know, have a long history of taking over any lands they could, even if it was useless to them. So, how these 5 countries managed to survive until today? So let's start with Andorra, a country located between France and Spain. So originally, Andorra was established as a buffer zone between France and Muslim Spain. So, in the 12th century, Andorra was a land controlled by the church and under the rule of the Bishop of Virgil. But, because the church wasn't able to protect those lands, they made a deal with some neighboring duchies. But then, the Count of Roy, who was protecting Andorra, started annexing those lands, which caused some problems with the church. But after the intervention of the King of Aragon, the problem was solved. Count of Roy returned the land that he took, and in return, the Pope didn't excommunicate him. And after that, Andorra became the co-prince country, ruled by both the Count of Roy and the Bishop of Virgil, something that survives until today. After that, the Count of Roy inherited the Kingdom of Navarre. And after that, King Henry III of Navarre became the King of France. And with that, the King of France became one of the co-princes of Andorra, something that protected it. And after the French Revolution, Andorra was on its own for a while, so they asked Napoleon if he wanted to become one of the co-princes, and he agreed before just annexing them to France. And after the defeat of Napoleon, Andorra was back to being co-ruled by the French king. But after the monarchy in France was finally abolished, the French president. In World War I, Andorra declared war on Germany. And because they were invited to the Treaty of Versailles after the war, they technically never made peace. Later, World War II happened, and Andorra declared itself to be a neutral country, and despite the fall of France, Germany never tried to invade it. And so, Andorra was spared the horrors of World War II. And with it, the last threat to Andorra was gone, and after the war, Andorra was back to being co-ruled by the French president. And now let's talk about Monaco, the country of rich people with formula races and casinos. But it's also the second smallest country in the world, fully located on the coast of France. So why didn't France just take it, like they do with everyone else? So Monaco started as a colony by the Phoenicians, then the Greeks, then the Romans, and then a lot of other people. So in the 10th century, Monaco was granted to the Grimaldis by the Holy Roman Emperor Henry VI, not the English one. The objective of that was to make it a rich colony for Genoa. But it wasn't all good for Monaco, because the Grimaldis got into conflict with the Kingdom of Aragon, one of the kingdoms that will later form Spain, into the ownership of Monaco. Anyways, that story is pretty long and complex, so I'll leave it to another video. Then, Monaco gained French protection and became the French vassal. But after the French Revolution, Monaco was occupied. But after the defeat of Napoleon, Monaco became the Sardinian protectorate. Later, in 1816, Napoleon III negotiated a treaty that made Monaco a French protectorate again. And in 1869, Monaco opened its first casino, and with it, modern Monaco was born. And with its low taxes laws, Monaco started getting rich. And after a treaty in 1990, Monaco became the completely independent country. But, in return, Monaco will completely ally itself with France in all international affairs. Later in World War II, Monaco was occupied by fascist Italy and Nazi Germany, but it was freed by the Allies. However, the last threat to Monaco's independence came from France in 1963. When it blocked Monaco's access to the sea because it was a tax haven for the rich French. But the problem was solved by Monaco making an exception for French people in their tax laws, and with it, Monaco still exists until today. And from France, let's go to Italy, with San Marino, the country with the best origin story. So, in the 3rd century, this guy called San Marino escaped to Italy from people trying to kill him because he was a Christian. So, for a bit of context, in that period, the Roman Empire persecuted the Christians, so most of them needed to find a place for refugees. Anyways, then San Marino became the deacon, but then a crazy woman accused him of being harassment, so he did what every real man will do and ran away to a mountain, where he built a Chapel monastery, and by time, other Christian refugees started to join him, and with that, San Marino was born. So in the next centuries, San Marino developed a great relationship with the Pope, who gave it more lands, protection, and recognition. But then, like all European stories, Napoleon happened, who invaded the papal state. But because Napoleon was a fan of republicanism, something that San Marino embraced, Napoleon protected it. And because San Marino didn't want any territorial expansion, it was allowed to stay independent after the Congress of Vienna. Later, during the Italian unification, San Marino provided refugees for Garibaldi, who was working on unifying Italy. So, San Marino told him that they didn't want to join Italy, and Garibaldi respected that. And after Italy was unified, San Marino remained independent. So, the next years were quiet for San Marino. since they were neutral in both world wars. But in 1944, Nazi Germany invaded San Marino, but it was later freed by the Allies. And now let's talk about the Vatican City, and how did it manage to survive despite being located entirely within the city of Rome. Well, actually, the Vatican isn't the exception, it's actually Italy. So previously, the Vatican was in the heart of the Papal State, a country that controlled most of central Italy. So, originally, the lands of the Papal State were controlled by the Byzantine Empire, but then the Lombards conquered it, then the Franks freed it and gave those lands to the Pope. And then, yes again, Napoleon happened, who invaded the Papal State and turned it into the Republic of Rome. But even after his defeat, Napoleon had spread the idea of nationalism to the Italian people. So, the Kingdom of Piedmont Sardinia decided to unify Italy, and by 1816 it conquered most of Italy, and with it most of the Papal State territories, except Rome, because Napoleon III protected it. But by 1871 the Franco-Prussian War had broke out, and because France didn't do well in that war, those troops needed to leave. So, Italy capitalized on that, and invaded Rome, and the Vatican was put under siege. And, funny enough, the Pope declared that whoever ordered the assault on the city will be excommunicated. So what did the Italians do? Easy, they made a Jewish soldier do it. And Rome was taken. So, in the next years, the Pope and Italy just ignored each other. But the problem was finally solved in 1920. When the Italian Prime Minister, Benito Mussolini, made a deal with the Pope. The Vatican will become an independent country, and Italy will pay compensation for the territories lost during the unification. In return, the Vatican will adopt all of Italy's border laws. And even after Mussolini's defeat, the new Italian government didn't change anything, and continued using the treaty. And finally, let's talk about Liechtenstein, the country that spent freaking 5 minutes figuring out how to pronounce its name. It's a country located between Austria and Switzerland, so why nobody just conquered it? So, Liechtenstein came to existence when the Holy Roman Emperor combined the two lands known as Vadas and Selenburg. In 1805, yes, you guessed again, Napoleon happened, who defeated the Austrians, and because of that, the Holy Roman Empire was dissolved. And after that, Napoleon created the Confederation of the Rhine, but because Johann Joseph, the Prince of Liechtenstein, was a good friend to Napoleon and agreed with a lot of his ideas, Napoleon protected Liechtenstein. And after the defeat of Napoleon, Liechtenstein managed to survive because the royal family was very close to the Austrians, and most of them lived in Vienna and never visited Liechtenstein in their life. Later, during the German unification process, Liechtenstein sided with Austria, but because they didn't want to fight fellow Germans, they sent their forces to Italy. And with their forces, I mean 80 dudes. And after the end of the war, Liechtenstein decided to become a neutral country, but they remained a close friend to Austria. Later, World War I broke out, so Liechtenstein decided to stay neutral, but because of their relationship with Austria-Hungary, it caused them some problems with the Allies. And after the end of the war, Liechtenstein decided to ally itself with Switzerland. Later, when the funny mustache guy came to power, Germany annexed Austria. But, despite that a lot of people in Liechtenstein wanted to join Germany, Germany didn't try to invade Liechtenstein, because it was protected by the Swiss army. And Germany didn't want to ruin its relationship with Switzerland. And after the defeat of Germany in 1945, Liechtenstein independence was secured. Anyways, this is all for today. I am Wonder of You, and I'll see you again in the next video.